Ha-Yun wiped the grease from her hands and stared at the massive creature outside the viewport. The dragon floated in space like a living constellation. Its scales glowed with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. She had seen dozens of these creatures during her 5 years on the ship, but they still took her breath away. The other crew members called them Karos. They said the name meant something like Starwalker in the old Vrinthian language. Ha-Yun just thought of them as dragons. It seemed to fit better. She was supposed to be fixing the air processor in Section 12, but she had stopped to watch the dragon. It was a stupid thing to do. If her supervisor caught her, she would be punished. Humans were not paid to stare at things. They were paid to work. Behind her, someone laughed. Ha-Yun turned and saw 3 Vrinthian officers standing in the corridor. They wore the silver uniforms that marked them as nobles. Their skin was pale gray, and their eyes were too large for their faces. When they smiled, their teeth looked sharp. "Look at the mudwalker," one of them said. "It thinks it can understand a Karos." The others laughed. Ha-Yun lowered her eyes and tried to walk past them. But one of the officers stepped in front of her. His name badge said Thalkar. He was a prince, which meant he could do whatever he wanted to her. "Answer me, human," Thalkar said. "Do you think you can bond with a Karos? Do you think your primitive brain could touch something so beautiful?" "No, sir," Ha-Yun said quietly. "I was just looking. Just looking." Thalkar smiled. "Humans are always just looking. Just touching. Just breathing our air and wasting our resources. You are lucky we let you serve us." Ha-Yun said nothing. She had learned that silence was the safest response. After a moment, Thalkar grew bored and walked away. His companions followed, still laughing. Ha-Yun returned to her work. Her hands shook as she reconnected the wires in the air processor. She hated this ship. She hated the way the Vrinthians looked at her, like she was something they had stepped in. But she had nowhere else to go. Earth was far away, and there were no human ships that could travel between the stars. Only the Vrinthians had that power, because only they could bond with the dragons. That night, Ha-Yun lay in her narrow bunk and drew in her journal. She sketched the dragon she had seen earlier. She tried to capture the way its eyes seemed sad. Even though she knew that was probably her imagination, the Vrinthians said the Karos had no emotions. They were just tools like hammers or shovels. But Ha-Yun did not believe that. She had seen the way the dragons moved when they thought no one was watching. She had seen them touch each other gently with their massive heads. She had heard them make soft sounds that were almost like singing. She fell asleep with the journal on her chest. The alarm woke her 3 hours later. It was not the normal wake-up alarm. This one was loud and angry, and it meant something had gone wrong. Ha-Yun pulled on her worksuit and ran into the corridor. Other crew members were running too, their faces tight with fear. "What happened?" she asked another human technician. "Bonding accident," the man said. "One of the young dragons rejected its rider. It went crazy." Ha-Yun's stomach dropped. She pushed through the crowd until she reached a viewport. Outside, she could see a dragon thrashing in the void. Its scales were flickering from blue to red to black. Something was wrong with it. It was dying. Several Vrinthian officers stood near the viewport watching. Prince Thalkar was among them. His face was pale and there was blood on his temple. "The beast tried to kill me," he was saying to the others. "It should be destroyed." "We cannot destroy it, Your Highness," another officer said. "A Karos is too valuable. We must try to calm it." "Then send someone to sedate it," Thalkar snapped. "We have tried. The creature will not let anyone near it. It tears apart anything that approaches." Han pressed her hand against the viewport. The dragon was suffering. She could see it in the way it moved and the desperate flailing of its limbs. It reminded her of a wounded animal she had once seen on Earth, a dog that had been hit by a car. The dog had been scared and in pain, lashing out at everyone who tried to help. Without thinking, Ha-Yun turned and ran. She did not know where she was going until she reached the airlock. Her hands moved automatically, pulling on an emergency spacesuit. The suit was old and probably had holes, but she did not care. "What are you doing?" Someone shouted behind her. Ha-Yun did not answer. She stepped into the airlock and sealed it behind her. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She pressed the button to open the outer door. Space swallowed her. It was cold and silent and huge. Ha-Yun had been in space before, but always tethered safely to the ship. Now she was floating free, tumbling slowly as her momentum carried her away from the airlock. She could see the dragon ahead of her, a massive shape writhing against the stars. Ha-Yun used the suit's thrusters to push herself toward the creature. The controls were stiff and she nearly missed it. But then she was close enough to reach out and touch the dragon's flank. The scales were hot beneath her glove. She could feel vibrations running through the creature's body, like the rumble of distant thunder, and then suddenly she felt something else. Fear. So much fear it made her dizzy. The dragon was terrified. It did not understand what had happened to it. It only knew pain and confusion and a desperate need to escape. Hayun closed her eyes. She did not try to push the feeling away. Instead, she let it wash over her. She understood fear. She had felt it every day for 5 years. She knew what it was like to be alone and scared and trapped. "I see you," she whispered, even though she knew the dragon could not hear her through the vacuum. "You are not alone." The thrashing stopped. Hayun opened her eyes. The dragon had turned its massive head toward her. Its eyes were enormous and golden, with pupils that looked like vertical slits. Those eyes stared at her with an intelligence that made her breath catch. The dragon's scales shifted from black to blue to soft gold. It made a sound that Hayun felt rather than heard, a deep vibration that passed through her suit and into her bones. Gently, carefully, the dragon curled its body around her. Hayun should have been terrified. The creature could crush her with the smallest movement. But she was not afraid. She pressed her hand against the dragon's scales and felt its heartbeat slow and steady now. The dragon carried her back to the ship. It moved slowly, almost tenderly, until Hayun was close enough to grab the airlock's emergency handle. Then it released her and drifted back, its golden eyes never leaving her face. When Hayun stumbled back into the ship, she found 50 people waiting for her. They were all staring at her like she had grown a second head. Prince Thalkar pushed through the crowd. His face was twisted with rage. "What did you do?" he demanded. Hayun pulled off her helmet. Her legs felt weak and she could barely stand. "I just talked to it," she said. "That is impossible," Thalkar said. "You are human. You have no telepathic ability. You cannot bond with a Karos." "I did not bond with it," Hayun said. "I just listened." Thalkar raised his hand to strike her, but another officer grabbed his arm. "Your Highness, we should take her to the Admiral." "This is unprecedented." Thalkar glared at Hayun for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away. 2 guards took Hayun by the arms and led her toward the command deck. As they walked, she looked back at the viewport. The dragon was still there, floating in the darkness. Its eyes glowed like small suns, and they were fixed on her. Even through the metal walls of the ship, Hayun could feel its presence. She could feel its gratitude. Something had changed. Hayun did not know what it meant yet, but she knew that her life would never be the same. The Admiral's office was cold and white. Hayun stood in the center of the room with her hands behind her back. 5 Vrinthian officers sat at a long table, staring at her like she was a puzzle they needed to solve. Admiral Chris sat in the middle. Her gray skin looked like stone and her eyes were the color of ice. "Explain what you did," Chris said. Her voice was flat and emotionless. Hayun tried to find the right words. "The dragon was in pain. I could feel it. So I went out there and I touched it, and I tried to show it that I understood." "You tried to bond with it," one of the other officers said. "No," Hayun said quickly. "I did not bond with it. I just let it know I was there, that it was not alone." The officers looked at each other. Prince Thalkar stood up from his chair. There was a bandage on his forehead where the dragon had hurt him. "She is lying," he said. "Humans do not have telepathic ability. It is impossible for her to have done what she claims. Yet the Karos responded to her," Admiral Chris said. It calmed immediately. It allowed her to approach when it attacked everyone else. "She must have used some kind of technology," Thalkar insisted. "A device hidden in her suit. We should execute her for sabotaging the bonding ritual." Hayun felt her mouth go dry. She wanted to argue, but she knew it would not help. Humans had no rights on this ship. If they decided to kill her, no one would stop them. But Admiral Chris held up one hand. "We will not execute her yet. The Karos has refused to eat since the incident. It will not cooperate with any of our handlers. If it dies, we lose a valuable asset." "What are you suggesting?" Thalkar demanded. "I am suggesting that we let the human care for it," Chris said, "at least until we understand what happened." Thalkar's face turned darker. "You would give a Karos to a human? That is an outrage." "The Karos has already chosen her," Chris said calmly. "Whether we like it or not. We will monitor the situation closely. If she shows any sign of betrayal, we will deal with her appropriately." The other officers nodded. Thalkar looked like he wanted to argue more, but he sat down and said nothing. You will report to the Dragon Bay every day, Chris told Hayun. You will care for the Karos and keep it healthy. You will be watched at all times. Do you understand? Yes, Admiral, Hayun said. Good, you are dismissed. Hayun left the office on shaking legs. Outside, a guard was waiting to escort her back to her quarters. As they walked through the corridors, other crew members stared at her. Some looked curious. Others looked angry. Hayun kept her eyes down and said nothing. That night she could not sleep. She kept thinking about the dragon. She could still feel its presence somewhere on the other side of the ship, like a warm glow at the edge of her mind. It was strange and frightening and wonderful all at once. The next morning, Hayun was taken to the Dragon Bay. It was a massive chamber at the bottom of the ship, with thick walls and a floor that could open to space. Several dragons were tethered there, floating in containment fields that held them in place. The dragon from yesterday was in the corner. Its scales were dull now and its eyes were half closed. When Hayun approached, it lifted its head and made a low sound. She felt a surge of emotion from it. Relief, happiness, recognition. Hello, Hayun said softly. She reached out and touched its nose. The scales were warm beneath her hand. Are you feeling better? The dragon made another sound, deeper this time. Hayun closed her eyes and tried to understand what it was telling her. She saw images in her mind. A vast darkness, a feeling of being trapped, a desperate need to be free. I know, Hayun whispered. I know what it feels like to be trapped. Over the next few weeks, Hayun spent every day with the dragon. She learned to read its moods by the color of its scales. Blue meant calm. Gold meant content. Red meant angry or afraid. She learned that it liked to be scratched behind the ridge of its skull, and that it hated the containment field that held it in place. Slowly, carefully, the dragon began to share its memories with her. Hayun saw things that made her weep. She saw the dragon being captured as a child, torn away from its family. She saw it being fitted with a collar that sent pain through its body whenever it disobeyed. She saw hundreds of years of slavery, of being forced to carry Vrinthian riders across the stars. The Vrinthians called it bonding, but it was not bonding. It was control. It was domination. The dragons had no choice. Hayun learned the dragon's name too. Not a name in words, but a feeling. It was like the sound of wind through stars. She could not say it out loud, but she knew it in her heart. For simplicity, she thought of him as Veyrath, a word that meant starlight in one of Earth's old languages. One day, another human technician approached her. His name was Daijung, and he worked in the engine room. Hayun had seen him around the ship, but they had never spoken before. He waited until the guards were looking away, then leaned close. I know what you did, Daijung whispered. With the dragon, Hayun tensed. I did not do anything wrong. I did not say you did. Daijung smiled slightly. I think what you did was amazing, and I think you should know that you are not alone. What do you mean? There are others like us, Daijung said. People who are tired of being treated like dirt. People who want to change things. We have been watching the dragons for a long time. We know they are suffering. But we never had a way to talk to them. Hayun looked around nervously. You should not be saying these things. If someone hears you, I am careful, Daijung said. Just think about it. If you can talk to one dragon, maybe you can talk to others. Maybe you can help them. He walked away before Hayun could respond. She stood there for a long time, her mind racing. Help them? How could she possibly help them? She was just one person. She had no power, no resources, no plan. But Veyrath nudged her with his nose, and she felt his hope. He believed she could do something. He believed she was special. Hayun did not feel special. She felt scared. But she also felt something else, something she had not felt in a long time. She felt purpose. Days passed. Hayun continued to care for Veyrath, and she started to notice things. The other dragons in the bay watched her. When she walked past them, their scales would flicker with color. She felt their curiosity, their longing. One afternoon, Prince Thalkar came to the Dragon Bay. He had been watching her from a distance for weeks, his face always twisted with anger. Now he approached with 2 guards at his side. I know what you are doing, he said to Hayun. Hayun's heart started to race. I am just taking care of the dragon, Your Highness. You are poisoning it against us, Thalkar said. You are filling its head with lies. I have seen the way it looks at me now. It hates me. I have not told it to hate anyone, Hyun said. I just talked to it. You have no right to talk to it. Thalkar's voice rose. You are nothing. You are a servant. The Kairos should be mine and you stole it from me. Veyrath made a low warning sound. His scales turned red and he moved between Haun and the prince. Even restrained by the containment field, the dragon looked dangerous. Thalkar stepped back. For a moment Haun saw fear in his eyes, then his face hardened. This cannot continue, he said. I will speak to the admiral. You will be removed from this duty and the beast will be properly disciplined. He turned and left. Haun stood there shaking. She knew Thalkar would do what he said. He would find a way to separate her from Veyrath, and then the dragon would be punished for protecting her. That night Daijung found her again. I heard what happened, he said. Thalkar is planning something. We need to move faster than we thought. Move faster? Hyun said. What are you talking about? We need to get you and the dragon off this ship, Daejung said. Before Thalkar can hurt either of you, Haun stared at him. That is impossible. Where would we go? There are places, Daejung said. Free zones outside Vrinthian control. It will be dangerous, but it is better than staying here. Hyun looked at Veyrath. The dragon was watching her with those golden eyes. She felt his trust, his willingness to follow her anywhere. She took a deep breath. Okay, she said. Tell me what to do. The escape happened at night when most of the crew was sleeping. Daejung had planned everything carefully. He had bribed a guard, disabled some cameras, and prepared a small shuttle. But the hardest part was getting Veyrath out of the Dragon Bay. Hyun stood in front of the containment field controls. Her hands were sweating. If she did this wrong, alarms would sound and they would all be caught. She looked at Veyrath. The dragon's eyes were calm, trusting. Ready? Daejung whispered behind her. Hyun nodded. She pressed the button. The containment field flickered and died. Veyrath stretched his wings, shaking off the stiffness of captivity. Two other dragons near him began to stir, sensing freedom. We can only take one, Daejung said urgently. The shuttle is too small. But the other dragons were already breaking free. Hyun felt their determination. They would not stay behind. One was smaller, with silver scales that shimmered like moonlight. The other was larger, older, with scars across its body. They moved to flank Veyrath, and Hyun understood. They were coming too. They will follow us, Hyun said. We do not need to carry them. An alarm started to wail. Somewhere, someone had noticed what was happening. Daejung grabbed Hyun's arm. Run. They sprinted through the corridors. Behind them, they heard shouting and the heavy footsteps of guards. Hyun's lungs burned. She had never run so fast in her life. They burst into the shuttle bay just as the first guards appeared behind them. A Vrinthian engineer named Voss was waiting by the shuttle. He was tall and thin, with kind eyes that did not match his harsh face. Hurry! He shouted, waving them forward. Hyun had never met Voss before, but Daejung had said he could be trusted. The engineer had grown tired of the Vrinthian way, tired of seeing the dragons suffer. He was risking everything to help them. They scrambled into the shuttle. Daejung took the controls while Hyun strapped herself into a seat. Through the viewport, she could see the guards entering the bay. They were raising their weapons. Go! Voss shouted. The shuttle launched. Energy bolts flashed past them, missing by inches. Then they were through the bay doors and into space. The three dragons followed, their bodies glowing against the darkness. Hyun looked back at the ship. It was already growing smaller behind them. Part of her could not believe what she had just done. She had lived on that ship for 5 years. It had been a prison, but it had also been the only home she knew. Where are we going? She asked. The Ember Reaches, Daejung said. It is on the edge of Vrinthian territory. Lots of refugees and outlaws. We should be safe there. Should be? Hyun repeated. Daejung smiled grimly. Nothing is certain anymore. The journey took 3 days. The shuttle was cramped and cold, and they had limited food. But Hyun did not mind. Every time she looked out the viewport and saw Veyrath flying beside them, she felt a strange joy. He was free. They were all free. On the 3rd day, they reached the Ember Reaches. It was a region of space filled with broken stations and abandoned ships. Everything looked damaged and worn, but there were lights in the darkness, signs of life. Daejung guided the shuttle toward the largest station. It was called the Wreck, and it looked like someone had built it from the pieces of a dozen different ships. When they docked, a woman was waiting for them. She was human with short dark hair and scars on her face. She wore a pilot's jacket and carried a weapon on her hip. Her eyes were hard and calculating. "You are the ones Daejung told me about," she said. "The human who talks to dragons." "My name is Hyun," Hyun said. "I am Hyo Jin," the woman said. "I run this place, and I do not usually help fugitives, but Daejung says you are worth it." "Worth what?" Hyun asked. Hyojin pointed at the viewport. Outside, the 3 dragons were circling the station. "Worth the risk of having those things around. If you really can talk to them, then maybe you can convince them not to eat us." Hyun almost laughed. "They do not eat people. How do you know?" Hyojin asked. "Because they told me," Hyun said simply. Hyojin stared at her for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "Okay, fine, you can stay. But if this goes wrong, you are all out. Understood?" Hyun nodded. She was too tired to argue. The wreck was bigger inside than it looked. There were corridors and rooms built into every spare inch of space. Most of the residents were refugees from different species, all running from something. They looked at Hyun with suspicion, but no one tried to hurt her. That night, Hyun could not sleep. She kept thinking about Veyrath and the other dragons. They were outside, floating in the emptiness. She wondered if they were afraid. She wondered if they regretted following her. Finally, she put on a spacesuit and went outside. The station had several airlocks that opened to the void. Hyun drifted out into space using a tether to keep herself from floating away. Veyrath appeared almost immediately. He moved through the darkness like a fish through water, graceful and powerful. When he reached her, he pressed his massive head against her helmet. Hyun felt a rush of warmth, of love. "I am sorry," she said, even though he could not hear her voice. "I know this is not what you expected. I do not know what happens next." Veyrath showed her an image. It was a place far from here. A region of space where the fabric of reality was thin. Hyun saw other dragons there, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They were singing together, their voices creating patterns of light and sound. "What is that place?" Hyun asked. The answer came not in words but in feelings. It was home. It was where the dragons gathered when they were free. It was where they belonged. "Can you take me there?" Hyun asked. Veyrath's answer was immediate. Yes. The journey to the dragon gathering place took several hours. Hyun rode on Veyrath's back, held in place by a harness that Voss had made. It was terrifying and beautiful. She had never felt so small and so significant at the same time. When they arrived, Hyun gasped. There were dragons everywhere. They filled the space with light and movement. Some were as large as buildings. Others were small and young. They moved together in patterns that seemed like a dance. One dragon approached them. It was ancient, with scales that shimmered like dying stars. Its eyes were deep and knowing. Hyun felt its gaze settle on her, and she felt naked, like every secret thought in her mind was visible. The ancient dragon spoke to her. Not in words, but in visions. Hyun saw the history of the dragons. She saw them flying free through the cosmos, singing their songs. She saw the Vrinthians arriving, capturing them, enslaving them. She saw centuries of pain. And then the ancient dragon showed her something else. A question. Why should we trust you? Humans are weak. They are fragile. What makes you different from the Vrinthians? Hyun did not know how to answer. She was weak. She was fragile. But she tried to show the ancient dragon what she felt. She showed it her loneliness, her fear, her desperate need to connect with something beyond herself. She showed it that she had never wanted power. She had only wanted to understand. The ancient dragon considered this. Then it spoke again. You are a speaker. The first in many lifetimes. You do not command us. You listen. This is rare. Hyun felt tears in her eyes. I will never hurt you, she said. I promise. The ancient dragon's response was gentle but firm. If you betray us, we will know. And we will end you, Hyun nodded. She understood. Trust had to be earned, and the dragons had been hurt too many times to give it freely. The ancient dragon moved closer. It touched its forehead to Hyun's helmet, and she felt a surge of energy pass through her. It was like being connected to a vast network, to thousands of minds all thinking and feeling at once. She heard the dragon singing, and the song was beautiful and sad and full of hope. When the connection ended, Hyun was shaking. The ancient dragon pulled back. You are marked now, it said. All Karas will know you as a speaker. They will listen to your words. But remember, speaker, We are not yours to command. We choose to follow you. Hyun bowed her head. Thank you, she whispered. When she returned to the wreck, Hyojin was waiting for her. The woman's eyes were wide. Do you know what you just did? She asked. No, Hyun admitted. You just made an alliance with the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Hyojin said. The Vrinthians are going to lose their minds when they find out. Hyun felt a chill. She had not thought about what this meant for the Vrinthians. She had only thought about helping the dragons, but it was too late to go back now. The Vrinthian fleet was already on its way, and Prince Thalkar was leading them. The Vrinthian fleet arrived 3 days later. 12 warships appeared in the darkness around the wreck, their weapons charged and ready. Hyun stood on the observation deck and watched them approach. Her hands were shaking. They are going to destroy us, someone whispered behind her. Hyojin pushed through the crowd. She looked tired and angry. They are demanding that we surrender you and the dragons, she told Haun. They say if we hand you over, they will let everyone else live. Hyun felt sick. She had brought this danger to these people. They had given her shelter, and now they would die because of her. I will go, she said. I will surrender. No, Daejung said firmly. He had appeared beside them, along with Voss. If you surrender, they will kill you, and then they will kill us anyway. Then what do we do? Hyun asked. We fight, Hyojin said, but her voice lacked confidence. Everyone knew the wreck could not stand against a Vrinthian fleet. Hyun closed her eyes. She reached out with her mind, searching for Veyrath. He was nearby waiting. She felt his calm strength, his readiness, and she felt something else. The other dragons. Not just the 3 who had escaped with them, but dozens more. They had come from the gathering place, drawn by the conflict. Haun opened her eyes. I need to talk to them, she said. Talk to who? Hyojin asked. The Vrinthians. Let me send them a message. Hyojin hesitated, then nodded. She led Haun to the communications room. A technician set up the broadcast. Haun's face appeared on every screen in the Vrinthian fleet. My name is Lee Haun, she said. Her voice was steadier than she felt. I am speaking to you on behalf of the Karos. The dragons. You have enslaved them for centuries. You have called it bonding, but it is not bonding. It is control. It is cruelty. On the main Vrinthian ship, Prince Thalkar appeared on the screen. His face was twisted with rage. You dare lecture us about the Karos? You are nothing. You are a thief and a traitor. I am a speaker, Haun said. The dragons have chosen me to speak for them. And they say no more. They will not serve you anymore. They are free, Thalkar laughed. You think you can stand against us? We have a fleet. We have weapons. What do you have? Hyun looked out the viewport. Dozens of dragons were appearing around the wreck. Their scales glowed with brilliant light. I have them, she said simply. Thalkar's smile faded. He looked at something off-screen and his face went pale. Hyun knew what he was seeing. The dragons were not attacking. They were just there, surrounding the fleet, waiting. This is your last warning, Thalkar said. Surrender now or we will open fire. If you fire, Hyun said, the dragons will defend themselves. And they will defend me. You cannot win this fight. We will see about that. The screen went black. A moment later, the Vrinthian ships opened fire. Energy bolts streaked through space toward the wreck, but they never reached it. The dragons moved faster than Haun had ever seen. They intercepted the shots, their scales absorbing the energy. Then they began to sing. The sound was unlike anything Hyun had ever heard. It was deep and resonant, and it seemed to shake reality itself. On the Vrinthian ships, alarms started to wail. Hyun felt a surge of information from Veyrath. The dragons were severing the bonds. All across the fleet, they were breaking free from their riders. Without the dragons, the Vrinthian ships could not move properly. They could not fold space. They were stranded. Hyun watched as chaos erupted on the enemy vessels. She saw Vrinthian crew members collapsing, clutching their heads. The psychic backlash from the severed bonds was devastating. Should we attack? Hyojin asked. Finish them while they are weak? Hyun shook her head. No, we are not here to kill them. We are here to show them that the old way is over. But Prince Thalkar was not ready to accept defeat. His ship, the largest in the fleet, activated a weapon Hyun had never seen before. It was some kind of psychic amplifier, a device that projected waves of mental energy. The dragons screamed as the weapon hit them. Hyun felt their pain like knives in her mind. He is trying to force them back into submission, Voss said, his face pale. That weapon, It should not exist. It is too cruel. Hyun could not let this continue. She reached out to the dragons, adding her strength to theirs. She did not know if it would help, but she had to try. Together, they pushed back against the weapon's assault. The psychic pressure was immense. Hyun felt blood running from her nose, tasted copper in her mouth. But they were not alone. The ancient dragon from the gathering place appeared. Its presence was like a star-going supernova. It focused its power on Thalkar's weapon, and Hyun saw the device begin to overload. He needs to shut it down, Daejong said urgently. If that thing explodes, but Thalkar did not shut it down. He pushed the weapon to maximum power, determined to win or die trying. Hyun tried to warn him, tried to make him understand, but he would not listen. The weapon exploded. Thalkar's ship tore itself apart in a brilliant flash of light. The shockwave hit the other Vrinthian vessels, sending them spinning. When the light faded, there was only debris and silence. Hyun felt tears on her face. She had not wanted this. She had not wanted anyone to die. But Thalkar had made his choice. The remaining Vrinthian ships did not attack again. They hung in space, damaged and defeated. After a long moment, one of them sent a message. It was Admiral Chris. The woman looked older than Hyun remembered, her face lined with exhaustion. This war is over, Chris said. We cannot fight without the Kairos, and I am beginning to understand that we should not have been fighting at all. Hyun wiped her eyes. What happens now? She asked. Now we talk, Chris said. If you are willing. Hyun looked at the dragons floating around her. She felt their approval. They wanted peace, but they wanted justice too. I am willing, she said. But the dragons must be recognized as free. No more bonds. No more slavery. Chris hesitated, then nodded. I will bring your terms to the conquered. But it will take time to change centuries of tradition. Time is what we have, Hyun said. The dragons have waited this long. They can wait a little longer. The negotiations took weeks. Representatives from across the Vrinthian Concord arrived at the wreck. Some were hostile. Others were curious. All of them were shocked to see a human speaking for the dragons. Hyun did not negotiate alone. She had Daejong to advise her and Voss to help her understand Vrinthian politics. Hyojin provided the neutral ground and kept everyone safe, and the dragons were always present, a silent reminder of the power that had shifted. Finally, they reached an agreement. The Vrinthian Concord would be dissolved. In its place would be the Interstellar Assembly, a new government where all species had a voice. The dragons would be recognized as a sovereign people, and humans who had been treated as servants for so long would be full citizens. It was not perfect. There was still anger, still resentment on all sides. But it was a beginning. On the day the treaty was signed, Hyun stood with Veyroth and watched the ceremony. She thought about how far she had come. A year ago, she had been a maintenance technician, invisible and ignored. Now she was a speaker, the bridge between humans and dragons. But she was also tired. The war had cost so much. Dozens of dragons had died, hundreds of Vrinthians too. And Thalkar, for all his cruelty, had been someone's son, someone's friend. Veyroth nuzzled her gently. She felt his comfort, his understanding. The cost had been high, but the alternative would have been worse. The dragons would have remained slaves forever. Hyun pressed her forehead against Veyroth's scales. Thank you, she whispered. For trusting me. Veyroth's response was immediate and warm. Thank you for listening. 5 years had passed since the treaty was signed. Hyun stood on the observation deck of a new station, built in neutral space where the boundaries of old territories met. The station was called Harmony, though Hyun thought that was a bit optimistic. Peace was still fragile. Trust was still rare. But things were better than they had been. The Interstellar Assembly met here regularly now. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to debate laws and settle disputes. It was messy and loud and sometimes frustrating, but it was also something new, something hopeful. Hyun was no longer just a speaker. She had become a teacher. The Academy of Resonance, as they called it, trained people to communicate with the dragons. Not all humans could do it. It required a certain kind of mind, a certain kind of heart. But enough could, that the dragons no longer relied on just one voice. Daejong worked beside her at the academy. He had survived the war, though he walked with a limp now from an injury he had taken during the final battle. He never complained about it. He said it was a small price to pay for freedom. Even Voss had joined them. The Vrinthian engineer taught classes on dragon biology, and the technology needed to travel safely with them. Some of his own people called him a traitor, but others, the younger ones especially, came to learn from him. They wanted to understand the new way. Ha-Un walked through the academy's halls, listening to the sounds of students practicing. In one room, a young woman was sitting quietly with a dragon, learning to sense its emotions. In another, a group was studying the patterns of dragon song. It was slow work, but it was important work. She found Hyojin in the cafeteria, drinking coffee and reading reports. The former pirate had become a senator in the assembly. It still surprised Ha-Yun sometimes. Hyojin had been so cynical in the beginning, but somewhere along the way she had started to believe in what they were building. Busy day? Ha-Yun asked, sitting down across from her. Always, Hyojin said without looking up. We have 3 new petitions from former conquered worlds. They want to join the assembly, but they are worried about losing their autonomy. And there is a dispute about mining rights in the Kessler Belt. Sounds complicated, Ha-Un said. It is. Hyojin finally looked up and smiled. But it is better than shooting at each other, right? Ha-Un smiled back. Much better. They talked for a while about small things, about students at the academy, about the latest dragon migration patterns, about the new restaurants opening on Harmony Station. It was comfortable and normal, and Ha-Un treasured these moments. But eventually, Hyojin's expression grew serious. I have been meaning to ask you something, she said. Are you happy? Ha-Yun blinked. What do you mean? I mean you have spent 5 years building this, teaching, negotiating, keeping the peace. But what about you? What do you want? Ha-Yun did not know how to answer. She had not thought about what she wanted in a long time. There was always so much work to do, so many people depending on her. I am fine, she said finally. Hyojin gave her a look that said she did not believe that. But she did not push. Just remember, she said, you are allowed to rest. You are allowed to live for yourself sometimes. That night, Ha-Un could not stop thinking about Hyojin's words. She lay in her quarters, staring at the ceiling. Was she happy? She did not know. She was proud of what they had accomplished. She was grateful for the friends she had made, but there was also a tiredness in her bones, a weight that never quite went away. She felt Veyrath reaching out to her from across the station. He was always nearby, always watching over her. Ha-Yun got up and put on a jacket. She made her way to the observation deck where the dragons gathered. Veyrath was floating outside, his scales glowing softly in the starlight. When he saw her, he moved closer to the viewport. Ha-Yun pressed, her hand against the glass, and he pressed his massive head against the other side. I miss you, she said, even though she knew he could not hear her through the glass. But he understood anyway. She felt his response. A question. When would she come fly with him again? It had been months since Ha-Un had flown with the dragons. There was always a reason to stay, a meeting, a class, a crisis that needed her attention. But Veyrath was right. She had been avoiding it, because flying with the dragons meant facing the vastness of space. It meant remembering how small she was, how fragile. Tomorrow, Ha-Un promised. I will come tomorrow. The next day, Ha-Un put on her spacesuit and climbed onto Veyrath's back. The harness that Voss had made all those years ago still fit perfectly. Veyrath carried her away from the station, out into the emptiness beyond. At first, Ha-Yun was tense. Her hands gripped the harness too tightly and her breathing was shallow. But as they flew further, she began to relax. The stars were so beautiful out here. The nebulae glowed with colors she had no names for, and the dragons sang as they flew, their voices weaving together in patterns that felt like music and poetry and prayer all at once. Veyrath took her to a place she had never seen before. It was a region where space folded in on itself, creating strange patterns of light. Other dragons were there, dozens of them, moving in a slow dance. They were celebrating something, though Ha-Yun did not know what. The ancient dragon appeared beside them. Its scales still shimmered like dying stars. It had not changed at all in 5 years. Ha-Yun wondered how old it really was. Hundreds of years? Thousands? The ancient dragon spoke to her. "Speaker," it said, "you have done well. The Karos are grateful." "Thank you," Ha-Un said. "But there is still so much to do, so many problems to solve." "There will always be problems," the ancient dragon said. "That is the nature of life. But you have given us something we lost long ago, hope. The young ones now grow up free. They will never know the chains we knew." Ha-Un felt tears in her eyes. She had not realized how much she needed to hear that. "What about you?" she asked. "What will you do now?" "I will sing," the ancient dragon said. "I will fly. I will remember those who came before and teach those who come after. That is enough." Ha-Un nodded slowly. She understood. The ancient dragon was at peace. It had lived long enough to see its people freed. Now it could rest. Veyrath carried her back to the station as the celebration continued behind them. When they arrived, Ha-Un climbed down from his back and removed her helmet. The air on the station smelled recycled and stale, but it was home. "Are you ready for the next flight?" Veyrath asked her, his voice resonating in her mind. Ha-Un looked back at him. His scales were bright now, healthier than they had ever been. His eyes were clear and full of joy. He had found peace too, she realized. He had found purpose. "Always," Ha-Un said, and she meant it. Years would pass. The Academy of Resonance would grow. New generations of speakers would emerge. The Interstellar Assembly would face challenges and overcome them. There would be setbacks and victories, losses and gains. But through it all, the dragons would fly free. They would sing their songs across the cosmos, and humans, once dismissed as primitive and weak, would stand beside them as equals, because Ha-Yun had shown them something that the Vrinthians never understood. Power does not come from domination. It comes from connection, from empathy, from the simple act of listening. On the anniversary of the treaty, the Assembly held a celebration on Harmony Station. Dignitaries from across the galaxy gathered. There were speeches and ceremonies and formal dinners. Ha-Un attended because she had to, but she felt out of place in the fancy clothes and crowded rooms. She slipped away as soon as she could and made her way back to the observation deck. It was quiet there, with only a few people watching the stars. Ha-Yun found a spot by herself and looked out at the darkness. A dragon flew past the viewport. Then another, then dozens more. They were performing a ritual flight, a celebration that had not been seen in millennia. Their scales created patterns of light that painted the void with color and meaning. Hyojin appeared beside Ha-Un. She had escaped the party too. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the dragons dance. "Do you ever regret it?" Hyojin asked finally. "All of this? You could have just stayed quiet, kept your head down, had a normal life." Ha-Yun thought about it. She thought about the scared girl she had been, cleaning air processors and being mocked by aliens. She thought about the moment she had touched Veyrath for the first time. She thought about everything that had come after. "No," she said. "I do not regret it." "Even though it was hard?" Hyojin asked. "Even though people died?" "Especially because of that," Ha-Un said. "Those sacrifices meant something. They bought freedom for beings who had none. They changed the galaxy. How could I regret that?" Hyojin smiled. "You really are something special, you know that?" Ha-Un shook her head. "I am just someone who listened. Anyone could have done it." "But they did not," Hyojin said. "You did, and that makes all the difference." Outside, the dragons continued their dance. Veyrath was among them, his scales blazing with gold and blue light. Ha-Yun pressed her hand against the viewport, and though he was far away, she felt his presence, his love, his gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, not to Hyojin but to Veyrath, to all the dragons, to the universe that had brought them together, and in her mind she heard their response. A chorus of voices singing as one. "Thank you, Speaker, for seeing us, For hearing us. For setting us free. Hayun closed her eyes and smiled. She was tired. She was scarred. She carried burdens that would never fully lift. But she was also happy, because she had done something that mattered. She had changed the world, and when the celebration ended and the dignitaries went home, Hayun would climb onto Veyroth's back once more. They would fly together into the great unknown, partners in the truest sense. Not master and servant, not rider and mount, but friends the stars were waiting, and they had all the time in the world.